There you go.
All
Hit
right.
the
Well,
button so you
welcome.
can come back on. Go ahead now.
Welcome.
Now you can announce.
All right. Welcome to our team call. You have joined the Alleman team call, and we have a special guest tonight. Really excited to have Gina Hawks, our product trainer for the entire company of the Alliance, making time out of her busy schedule to jump on a call, do some advanced sales training with us. And Gina, I know that this may take a little bit of time. You're going to go over, I know you have some great stuff to cover. Guys, Gina has been with the Alliance for maybe 10 years now.
Yeah.
10 years. I feel like you're a sister to me. People, the best compliment I ever got is someone at the Alliance thought I was Gina. I said, oh Lord, please give me that compliment again. I'll take it every day. But no, we seriously, we love you. You have a wealth of knowledge. And so I'm just going to go ahead and turn the call over to you and let you do some training. So thank you again.
Okay, well, thank you, Michelle. Thank you guys for having me on. It's always an honor to be able to do some training for your teams, and so I don't take it lightly, and I appreciate that you let me do this. And what we had talked about covering this evening was a little bit, advanced training. So I want to talk about kind of how to present an IUL for someone that's looking for it for like a retirement savings type plan, and then maybe go into how to run an illustration for F&G, which is one of our main carriers that we use for the IULs. So that's what we're going to cover tonight. And I want to, let me see if I let's see. It says starting share screen will stop other participants' sound share. That won't mess up the recording, will it?
No, you're fine. Sorry, I had
Okay.
that. I fixed that.
Okay. All right. Awesome. I just want to make sure I can share my screen. So, okay. So when it comes to presenting an IUL, I talk with a lot of you and some of your clients in presenting this. And so I'm going to basically go over what I do when you book an appointment with me on my schedule for you and a client and myself to have a conversation about an IUL. And typically, again, this is for somebody that's looking for it for retirement savings. We can write IULs for all kinds of different reasons. Mortgage protection, just income replacement, someone wanting permanent life insurance. But what we want to focus on tonight is if they are wanting to use this for retirement savings. So that's kind of the backdrop, if you will, of what I'm going to go into presentation wise is I'm presenting someone that you guys have talked to the client. You've probably already sold them something like a mortgage protection plan or something, just basic insurance coverage. And now they're interested in looking at the IUL for a retirement savings. And I'm not gonna have time to go through like in detail what I do, but there's a couple of slides here that I pretty much always go through with a client when I'm explaining the IULs. And one of the first things that I can tell you is I do not start out talking about it being life insurance unless you've already talked to the client about that. If they already know we're going to talk about a life insurance plan that helps them save for retirement, then, I'll do it a little bit different. But I would recommend when you're booking appointments with your clients for second appointments to come back and talk to them about an IUL, don't mention that it's life insurance. Whether you're having me on the call with you or whether you're doing it on your own or whether you're getting Megan or Michelle or somebody else to help you, because you have tons of great people on your team that know how to sell these, are better at it than I am. But regardless, when I start talking about it, I refer to it as a tax-free retirement plan until I get through all the benefits of it. And the reason we say that is not because we're trying to be misleading. they are going to know by the end of a call with me that they're buying life insurance. I mean, no question about it. They're going to know that. But in the beginning, nobody wants to buy life insurance to save for retirement until they realize the benefits of it. So if you're talking to clients and you're getting into that conversation of how are you saving for retirement, they say they're putting money in a 401k. You say, okay, great. Does your company match? Either they do, they don't, doesn't matter. But you're just finding out how they're currently saving for retirement. And you realize, okay, this could be a good prospect potentially for an IUL. I need to book another appointment with them. Then, don't say, hey, well, we got these great IUL products that help you save for retirement. I think you're really going to love it. Don't have time to go over it now, but let's book another appointment. Because when you say IUL, they may Google that and then they're going to find out it's life insurance. And then they're going to be like, well, I don't need more life insurance. I don't know why they would talk to me about that. And they might cancel the appointment. So it's just getting them to understand. And a great question that a lot of our top IUL salespeople ask when they're kind of prefacing to BAM-FAM for that second appointment is, what are you doing to set up a tax-free retirement? Or what have you done to set up a tax-free retirement? And most people are going to say, I don't know what that is, or I'm not doing anything, or, whatever. It's going to spark an interest. And regardless of what they say, then you can say, okay, great. Well, we have this great tax-free retirement plan. What I'd like to do is set another appointment and go over that with you. You don't have time to do it right now, but let's get together again next week, same time, same place. And let's go over what we can do to set up a tax-free retirement. Just keep it very basic. And I did forget to mention, I do have the chat box open. So if you guys have questions, please put those in the chat box. What if they say they're saving 15% in a 401k? How do you still find a need if they're already saving? So pretty much everybody I talk to is putting money in a 401k. There's hardly ever an IUL appointment that I do that they're not already saving money somewhere. So the key is, if they say they're saving 15% in a 401k, my next question would be, how much is your employer matching? Because I can guarantee you they're probably not matching 15%. Let's say they're matching 5% and they say, well, they match everything up to 5%. Okay, great. Awesome. Well, then you just realize that there's an extra 10% here that if we can show the client the benefit of an IUL, they don't even have to spend any extra money. They're already spending it, putting it in their 401k. We can show them a better, a more tax efficient way to save for retirement. And then they come to their own conclusion of, okay, well, why am I putting this extra 10% in my 401k if I'm not getting matched? I've got risk of loss in the market. All this money's going to be taxed when I take it out. They start going through all this stuff in their head. And most of the time, at least it's been my experience, they're like, well, why don't I just put the 5% in my 401k and the other 10% in this? And we're like, that sounds like a great idea. So, and I've even had conversations with people that I had one in particular where someone was putting 6% in their 401k and they were getting matched the full 6%. And I still went through and showed them the benefits of the tax-free retirement and all that. And they still decided to put money in the IUL, even though they were getting matched 100% in their 401k. So I hope that answers your question, Michelle. If it doesn't, I've got so many boxes open on my screen. I can't see everybody.
It did. Okay. That was good.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, just find out. And I always tell them, I edify the fact that they're putting money in a 401k. I don't bash the 401k. If they're putting money in a 401k, I tell them, that is awesome, Katie. So many people are not saving anything for retirement. So great job putting money in your 401k. That's great that you're doing that. I don't bash it at all. But then once I find out how they're saving, I'm like, okay, well, let's talk a little bit about taxes and how that money in your 401k is going to get taxed. And so what I have pulled up on the screen right now is our IUL ATM. And there's several slides in here, but most of the time when I'm talking to a client with one of you agents, you guys have already done the financial picture and all that. I'm not going through all that again. You just do an introduction to me. We do basics of how are they currently saving for retirement and what is their goals? What are their retirement goals? And then I say, okay, great. Well, you're putting money in a 401k. Let's talk a little bit about taxes. And I bring up this slide and I say, there's what you can see here is I refer to them as two buckets. So you've got the bucket on the left, which is the tax deferred bucket, and then you've got the bucket on the right, which is the tax free bucket. So the tax deferred bucket, that's your 401k. That's exactly, it is a tax deferred way to save for retirement. And what that means is you put money in, you're not taxed on that money as it's going in. That money grows over time. You're not taxed on any of that money while it's growing. But when you're going to get hit with taxes is when you retire. Because when you retire and you start taking money out of that 401k, you're going to get taxed on 100% of it because none of that money sitting in that 401k has ever been taxed. And I'll say, does that make sense? And most of the time they know what they're aware of that. Every now and then they're like, well, I didn't know my money when my 401k was going to get taxed. But most of the time they're aware of that. So they will, they'll usually say, yeah, that makes sense. Then I ask the question, well, let me ask you this. Do you think income taxes are more likely to go up or down in the future? And almost every single time they laugh and they're like, yeah, they're probably going up. And I'm like, yeah, I think you're probably right. And I just leave that question. I ask it, but I don't address it at that point. I move on to the tax-free bucket. And I say, okay, so now we know how money gets taxed in this tax-deferred bucket. Let's talk about the tax-free bucket. Now, the tax-free bucket, you're going to put money in, and it's going to be after-tax money that you're putting in. Unlike your 401k, it goes in before taxes in your 401k. It's going to go in after taxes on the tax-free, in the tax-free bucket. And I always say this because people are visual and, you know, the more we can show them, that's why I have the chart on the screen, talk about it and talk in pictures, the better they're going to understand this. So when I tell them they're going to pay taxes on the money now and then put it in the tax-free bucket, I'll say, this is what we call paying tax on the seed instead of the harvest. What I mean by that is you're going to pay tax on a smaller amount of money at a lower income tax rate. And I do this and they can see me on the screen, smaller amount of money, lower income tax rate versus paying tax on a large amount of money, which we just said was probably going to be at a higher income tax rate. And then I ask again, I ask multiple times throughout when I'm talking, does that make sense? Every single time they're like, yep, that makes perfect sense. I've never had anybody say, well, that didn't make any sense. I'd rather pay more tax on a bigger amount at a higher tax rate later. But every time I'm asking them, does that make sense? And I'm getting a yes from them. All of those are taking that client on the path that I want them to go on to see that this tax-free bucket is the way to go. And so I'm constantly asking them, does that make sense? When they say yes, then, you know, I'm moving on and I'm getting those little trial closes along the way and getting them to not only grasp how this works, but agree that this sounds like a good idea. So then I say, well, you put the money in after taxes, that money grows over time. And then the cool thing about the tax-free bucket is when you take that money out in retirement, it's going to be 100% tax-free. So your money in this bucket, you don't have to pay tax on any of it when you take it out versus the money in your 401k that you're going to have to pay tax on all of it. And again, I say, does that make sense? And they're like, yep, that makes perfect sense. I don't get a whole lot of questions on this part unless someone didn't realize that their 401k was going to get taxed. And I've only had a couple of those, but I just try to keep it very basic, very simple, and give them enough information to get them to understand how this works, but not too much information to overwhelm them. And I have not told them yet it's life insurance. I've just been talking about this tax-free bucket and money going in this tax-free bucket. So I have to be very, very intentional about this because I have trained insurance agents for so many years. I'm used to talking in insurance lingo. I try very, very hard when I'm talking to clients never to use insurance lingo. Like, I don't say death benefit. I say the money that's going to be left to your family when you die. I just try, and I have to be very intentional about it because the words just want to come out of my mouth saying death benefit and things like that. I don't talk in those kind of terms. I talk in regular, everyday language that people is going to understand. So I just keep it really, really simple. So I show them, okay, so we figured out that the tax-free bucket, this is where we really should have our money for retirement. It makes more sense. So then I'll ask them, if I haven't asked them already, at this point, I'll ask them, okay, tell me what is most important to you when it comes to saving for retirement. And every single time I get something along the lines of, I want my money to grow. That's pretty much, and I know the answer I'm going to get, but again, I need to get them talking. I need them to think this is their idea, not mine. So I ask them, what's important to you? And it's usually they'll say something on the lines of, well, I want to make sure I have enough money in retirement that when I'm ready to retire, I'm going to be able to, live the lifestyle I want to live, do the things that I want to do, something along those lines. Sometimes they'll say, well, I want to get good growth, but usually it's more of a story of here's what I want to do in retirement. And what I'll say is, and I've learned all this from like Michelle, you guys that are awesome at sales. That's where I've learned the process I go through here. So I reframe their question and I say something like, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is you want to make sure that you get good growth here. And they're like, yeah, absolutely. It may take them a few minutes to get to that, but I just say, this is what I'm hearing you say. Am I hearing this correctly? You want to make sure that you get good growth on this. And they're like, yes. If they've not said anything about market losses, which sometimes they do, they'll say, well, I want it to grow. I don't like losing money in the market, things like that. Then if they haven't said that, I'll bring it up. And I'll say something like, well, how do you feel about losing money in your retirement account when the market goes down? And of course, they're going to say, well, I don't like that, or I don't feel very good when that happens. And I also try very hard not to ask yes and no questions when I'm going into it more in depth. So I don't ask, do you like losing money in the market? Because most of the time they're going to say no, but that doesn't get them talking as much. So I ask them, well, how do you feel about losing your retirement savings when the market goes down? And of course they say, well, we don't like that. We'd rather not have that. I'm like, okay, so you really want good growth and you want to make sure that you're not losing money in the market and you want to be able to get this money out tax-free. So I'm hearing you say the good growth. Let's talk about how money in this tax-free account is going to grow. And again, I don't say this policy, I say this tax-free account. So then I move down to this slide. So usually some of these other slides I'll go through sometimes depending on, questions the client's asking or things that they say. But the main slides that I go through, and you can get this IUL ATM off of the university. It's out there under advanced resources. I go through the how money is taxed and how indexing works. Because those to me are the biggest benefits of the IUL is tax-free money and good growth without market risk. So I'll ask them, I'll say, okay, well, this money in this account is going to earn interest based on indexing. Have you ever heard of that? And they'll typically say, no, I've never heard of that. Or I've heard of it, but I don't really know how it works. And I'll say, hey, that's fine. Most people have never heard of it. And I'll say it's really a fancy word for the fact that the company is going to watch a market index like the S&P 500. I use that one as an example because most people are familiar with it. And they're going to watch how the index performs over the year, and they're going to pay you interest based on how the index performs. Now, they're not putting your money in the market. You're not buying stocks, you're not buying bonds, you're not buying mutual funds, nothing like that. They're just watching the market and how it grows, and they're going to pay you interest based on how the market grows. And then I'll say, here's how it works. There's 3 things your money can do. It can go up, it can stay the same, it can go down. You've already told me you want yours to go up, you don't want it to go down. And that's what indexing does. So through this indexing, here's what happens. When the market goes down, you're not going to lose any money. You're going to stay the same because you have a floor. And it's like 0% or maybe 0.25%. But it means that when the market goes down, you don't lose your money due to the market going down. You may not earn any interest that year or very little, but you're not losing any money when the market goes down. And again, I'll say, does that make sense? They'll be like, yep. And then I'll say, okay, well, the other thing the market does is it goes up. So here's what happens when the market goes up. You're going to earn interest when the market goes up. The higher the market goes up, the more interest you're going to earn. There are going to be some maximums on what you can earn on the upside. And the reason for that is because they are protecting you on the downside. It's a trade-off that, the years that the market does really, really, really well, you might not get all that gain, but the years that the market tanks, you're not losing anything. And so it's a trade-off. You're going to have a maximum and you're going to have a floor, and you're going to earn somewhere in between those. And then I'll say, does that make sense? Or do you follow any questions? A lot of times I'll ask any questions about that. Sometimes they'll have a few questions here. Typically, they don't have very many questions because, again, I explain it very simplistically. I don't talk about annual point-to-point or monthly point-to-point or caps or participation rates. Those words never come out of my mouth when I'm talking to clients. I call the caps and stuff like that a maximum. And yes, there are accounts that don't have any maximums, but I just don't go into that, because if you tell a client you have the unlimited opportunity for the upside, but you're never going to lose any money, that sounds too good to be true. And so I don't go into the fact that some of the accounts don't even have a cap. I just tell them you're going to have some maximums and you're going to have a floor. And you're going to earn somewhere in between there. But it's a safe way to earn very good interest. And then I'll tell them, and this is why it's important for you to have your own IUL or have one on your kids or your grandkids or somebody. Because I tell every single person that I talk to, I own these policies. And I have for the last over 10 years. And so that builds credibility that, oh, okay, well, she's not just telling me this is something that I should do, but she owns these herself. And so I tell them, I say, now you're going to earn interest based on what the market does. We don't know what the market's going to do in the future. So we have no idea what you're going to earn in the future, but we do know what the market's done in the past. And I've owned these policies for over 10 years now. And I can tell you that my personal policies earn between 6 to 8% average per year. And that's an annual average. That means some years it's higher, some years it's lower, but it averages out between 6 to 8% per year. So not bad, average return, considering you can't ever lose any money because the market goes down. And people like that. I mean, I don't have people say, well, that's too low. I don't want it. They're usually, when I tell them that, I usually get this response. Like, that sounds pretty good. And so I just ask them if they have any questions about how it's going to earn interest. And typically, they might have a couple, and I talk a little bit about that. But then I will say, okay, now I've been talking for, I don't know how many minutes, a while. I have not mentioned that it's life insurance yet. So here's the point. I tell them it's life insurance. I say, okay, so Michelle, the way we're able to get you this account where you can get money out tax-free, not lose money in the market, and get some good returns on the money is actually through life insurance. It's a life insurance policy that has a savings account built into it. And then I say this, and I think this is important because it's overcoming an objection before you get it. I'll tell them it's a benefit of life insurance that hardly anyone knows exists. It's a benefit of life insurance that hardly anyone knows exists. What objection does that overcome? Why haven't I ever heard of this? You know, if it's so great and it sounds too good to be true, why haven't I heard about it? I just told them hardly anybody knows this exists, which is the truth. I mean, it's crazy to me, but it is like the best kept secret out there, I think. So I tell them it's a benefit of life insurance. Hardly anyone knows this exists. Most people don't realize you can put extra money into life insurance and be able to get that money out without taxes because it's in a life insurance policy. And I've done, I don't know how many of these, hundreds and hundreds of these over the past couple of years since I started doing it. I've never had one person at this point say, oh, if this is life insurance, I don't want it. Not one person has said that, because I start with all the benefits. Here's what this tax-free retirement bucket of money, here's how you access it. You're going to have access to that and not have to pay any taxes on it at all. Here's how you're going to earn interest. Here's how we're going to keep you safe from market losses. Here's the kind of returns that you're going to get. They see all that. They're like, oh, okay, well, you know, if I got to get some life insurance to get these benefits, I'm cool with that. And so I've never had any pushback of, oh, well, this is life insurance. Well, I don't want this if it's life insurance. Then at that point, once I tell them life insurance policy with savings account built in, no, hardly anyone's ever heard of it. Then I'll usually say, kind of my transition to moving over to the illustration is, I'll say, well, for most people, it really, all of this starts to make sense when you can see some numbers in your particular situation. And so what I'd like to do is run some numbers for you. We can go over them and kind of give you an idea of what this could look like for your retirement. And they say, yeah, that sounds great. And so then either sometimes I have enough information prior to the call that I can go ahead and have the illustration done. If not, it takes me all of like a minute to do an illustration. So I'll go in, I'll pull up the information or pull up the illustration. I'll do the illustration. They don't see any of that. I'm not screen sharing while I'm doing any of that. Once I've got the illustration up, I'll pull it up and then I'll go through the numbers. And I don't go through every page. They're like 20, 40, a lot of pages. I don't go through them all. I go through the numbers and I just, you know, explain a few things on the numbers. I don't want to get into too much detail on that tonight. I've done other calls on that, but I just go through the numbers and I show them, here's how much life insurance you're going to get. Here's how much premium you're going to pay in. And I usually don't say pure premium. I usually say, here's how much money you're putting into it. I'll show them, okay, well, you know, if you die at age 90, you've put in $200,000, you've gotten out $800,000 in tax-free loans, and you still have a $200,000 death benefit. Again, I don't say death benefit. $200,000 worth of life insurance is going to go to your family when you die. So, Michelle says maybe we can do a part 2 where we go through the actual illustration. I think that would be good because that takes a little more time. I probably spend this going through like the prepping them, getting them interested in it. That probably takes me 10 minutes at the most. I mean, I've stopped and kind of explained things to you guys going through, but I spend about 10 minutes on that. Then we get into the illustration and I show them, you know, projected loans. I tell them, again, we don't know exactly what this number is going to look like, but based on past experience, here's what it looks like. And kind of go through and explain all that. And it really does make a big difference when they can see the numbers and what it looks like in their situation. And usually at that point, they're like, I did one the other day and the guy was like, okay, where do I sign? What do I need to, I'm in, what do I need to do? And I'm like, okay, we'll talk to, I forget which agent it was. I'm like, well, they can take care of it for you. They'll fill out all the paperwork for you. So is the PowerPoint available? Yes, it is. It is on NAAuniversity.com under Advanced Resources, and it's going to be the IUL ATM. So we have our ATM for like mortgage protection and final expense because this is a very different kind of sale. We have a special ATM just for IULs. So that's what I'm using, is straight off of the university. So you can go in, and again, you might want to go through some of these other slides. Most of this I kind of go through. I just don't do it with the slide. It asks, what their goals are and things like that. I ask them that. I just don't necessarily go through the slides for that. But these other, with the bar chart and how the indexing works, every single appointment, I go through that because I think it's simple, easy, and it just makes, I don't seem to get a ton of questions from clients because I think I am able to keep it simple, give them enough information to understand it, but not too much information to overwhelm them. Because you can make this very complicated. You don't want to. You're going to talk yourself out of a sale if you do that, but you can make it very complicated. So are there any, before we kind of go into illustrations, are there any other questions? If anybody wants to unmute or put it in the chat.
I know LaCora had a question. I don't know if you answered it, Gina, but this illustration is available under advanced resources in the NAA University.
Yep.
And yes, I totally agree with Gina.
She answered it.
Totally agree with Gina about not going through all of these. If you go through all of these with someone, you're going to bore them to death. They're going to be checked out, and then you'll not make a sale.
Yeah.
But what she is doing by going through just these two is the biggest thing. Go ahead, Gina. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. You're right. The other information is in here in case, to help you overcome objections, is what these other slides do. So if somebody tells me, well, I don't think income tax rates are going to go up in the future, I think they'll go down, actually. I'm like, okay, who knows? You could be 100% right. None of us know what's going to happen. But do you have any idea what they've looked like in the past? And then I'll show this chart, which shows that, back in the 40s and 50s, the top income tax rate was like 91%. And right now we're at 39%. So we're in one of the lowest maximum income tax brackets in history. So again, it's just educating the client of, okay, I understand. And you could be 100% right. They could go down, but based on what this chart is showing, I don't think they're going to go down. So those other slides are just in there to help you overcome objections if you're getting them. I typically don't get those. So I go through 3 slides, the how money is taxed and the 2 on how indexing works. And that's it. So, okay, now what I'm going to do is I am going to go into F&G software. Oops, I want to just click there. All right, so F&G is one of the companies that we use for IULs. We've got a couple great companies. And so I'm just going to go through real quick. I do have videos on the university step by step how to go through these illustrations, but I just want to show you how I build, I would say 95% of the illustrations that I do. So you log into F&G's website. You do have to get a login from F&G. You click here under sales tools where it says illustrations. And then I do the web version because I don't want to have to download it on my computer. And then it's going to ask you, do you want to start a new case or do you want to go to an existing case? So if you wanted to go back to an illustration you'd ran before, you would choose that. I'm going to do start a new case. And then this initial screen, what you're going to notice, kind of like the IUL ATM, like I was always big in school on like Cliff Notes and cheating, quite frankly, if I could. I was like always looking for shortcuts. Like, I ain't got time for all this studying and stuff. How can I get to the information that I need very quickly? So you can see I gave you the Cliff Note version of the IUL ATM. I'm gonna give you the Cliff Note version of how to run a illustration, because you'll notice there'll be a bunch of boxes on these illustrations. I never put anything in. I never change them. I haven't in 10 years. If I haven't used it, you probably won't need to use them either. So, so you can put in the client's name. I'm just going to leave it at new client. Let's just say we have a 30-year-old female. And we're going to say she's in Texas. it is important to put the state, so, because all this is state specific. We want an indexed universal life. Then we're going to click on this button to find the available products. Anytime we're doing a tax-free retirement, we want to use the path setter. So we're going to choose path setter. And then this next screen, and again, there were other things on there I didn't change. I don't ever change them. This next screen is where we're going to input most of our information. Now, the client information, it's going to pull all of that from the screen that we just entered, except for the underwriting class. So I typically use 2 underwriting classes. I use either non-tobacco if they don't use any tobacco products, or I use standard tobacco if they use tobacco products. As you can see, there's a lot of other options here. I don't like to quote preferred. I don't care how healthy the client is. I would rather be able to come back and tell them they're going to get a lower rate than we thought. So I usually do non-tobacco if they don't use any tobacco products, or standard tobacco if they use tobacco products. The only time you're going to use these rated is if the client has some health conditions, you've talked to an underwriter and they say something like, well, they're going to be a table B. Then that's where you put those in. So non-tobacco, we're going to leave it at non-tobacco. And then the majority of the information that I put in is right here under this solve. So in this example, we're going to say this 30-year-old, they're thinking about how much they put in their 401k. They've seen the benefits of the IUL, and they're like, you know what? I think I want to do $300 a month into the IUL. So I'm like, okay, cool. So that's the only number I need is how, and I'll usually ask them if I don't know already, well, how much are you thinking to put aside per month to save for retirement? A lot of times I will say, well, most people realize that in order to save anything significant for retirement, they need to be saving 10% of their income. So in order to save anything, most people, because people want to be like most people realize that if they're going to save anything significant for retirement, they need to be putting away at least 10% of their income. And I'll say, does that sound about right? And they'll be like, yeah, that sounds about right. And I'm like, okay, so what's your annual income if I don't know yet? And then I'll do the numbers and say, okay, well, that's $400 a month. Does that sound about right? And most of the time they're like, yep, that sounds about right. Or they'll adjust it up or down or whatever. But that's a good starting point. If they don't know for sure, 10% of their income. And then we can go up and down from there. So let's say they say $300 a month. So under this solve for, most of the time, I'm doing maximum accumulation and income. That's the solve I do. Here's where most people mess up the illustration. It's always going to default to solve for premium. You want to change that to solve for face amount. We know the premium. We don't need to solve for the premium. They just told us they want to put in $300 a month. What we don't know is how much insurance do they have to buy to be able to pay $300 a month. So solve for face amount. It's going to ask me the premium. It's going to default to annual. So I'm going to change that to monthly. If you don't do that, it's going to put in $300 a year. That's not going to be good. So, and then we just put in our $300. Click the little check mark. Click OK. So again, solve for face, input our premium amount, pay premium to. So for a 30-year-old, I'm usually going to pay that to about age 65, about retirement age. So I'll put in a 65 because I want to pay it to age 65. If I just put in a 65, it's going to do it 65 years, and that's going to be to age 95. So age 65, the cash value at age 100, I don't change that. I go down to the loans. I don't change anything on the loans because typically I'll have them stop paying premiums 1 year, start taking money out the next. And if it's age 65 is what I'm paying the premiums to. This is just the easy way to remember it. Whatever this age is, the age you want to start the loans needs to be the same age. So because it was 65 up there, it defaults to 65 here. That's fine. That's what I want. I usually do them about to age 90 because that's beyond life expectancy for most people. And then I do change the loan type to fixed. That just simply makes the illustration more conservative. And I am big on under promising and over delivering. So I want my illustration to be on the conservative side. You don't have to do this, but it's just what I do. And then you do want to check this use 7702 rates. That's the new legislation that went in earlier this year that allows them to put more money into the policy and buy less life insurance, which is a good thing when they're trying to use it to save for retirement. Then I click on OK. And that is all I change. I'll run it at option A, and then I'll come back and I'll run it at option B to A sometimes. Don't have time to kind of go into those details tonight. Sometimes option A is better for the client. Sometimes options B is better for the client. I never know until I run the numbers. That's why I run both. So I'll go through and I'll run it at option A. I'll look at how much life insurance are we buying and how much in loans are we getting. And I'll show you this. And then I'll come back and I'll run it option B to A and change it, do an increasing until they start taking money out and then change it. So let me just leave it at option A. That's all I input in the illustration. And then I go up to calculate results. And I'm looking at how much life insurance are we buying and how much money are we getting in loans? Because again, this person doesn't really care about the life insurance. They want to maximize their money for retirement. So we got a little over $300,000 in life insurance. Let's scroll down. So we've got money going in to age 65, and then from age 66 to 90, we have loans coming out. The policy's not lapsing, even with all those loans coming out. It's going all the way to age 120, which we want it to do that so that all the money stays tax-free. So we've got $300,000, a little over $300,000 in life insurance, and a $38,999 loan. So let's just say $39,000. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to change the B to A, and I'm going to leave it at increasing death benefit while they're putting money in. And then I'm going to change it to a level death benefit when they start taking the money out through the loans. So I'm going to do that. It's going to ask me what age do I want to change it. I want to change it at 66 because that's when they started taking the income out. And then I'm going to rerun it. And again, I'm going to compare life insurance amount and loan amount. It's going to give you a lot less in life insurance. And then sometimes it makes a difference, a big difference in the loan. Sometimes it doesn't. So now we've got $110,000 worth of life insurance instead of $330,000 or $300,000 worth of life insurance. So we got a whole lot less life insurance, which means it's going to cost the client less. And we've got we've got a lower loan. So there's no way you would want to do this because they're getting less life insurance and less in loan amount. Let me change one thing to make sure that that's accurate, because I've seen the illustration do some quirky things every now and then. So I'm just going to run it at option B to make sure that that gives us the right insurance amount. I've seen this happen. This is why I run both A and B every single time, because it's just, you never know which one's going to be best for the client. So we got the same insurance amount, and then, yep, so that's right. So, so we would not want to go with option B. We would not want to give them less insurance and a lower loan. So I would go back and just change it to option A and then run the full illustration. So again, I just go back here, change it to option A. I know what those numbers are going to look like. To run the full illustration, once I have everything exactly like I want it, then I click on view and print illustration, and it'll show the full 20-some page illustration. But again, I want to show you that, remember, I put pretty much all the information in right here under this solve. The only other thing I came down and changed and played with a little bit was the death benefit option. But notice the face amount, the change the face amount, all this premium stuff, the interest crediting options, there's all kinds. I don't even know what's at the bottom of this page. I never scroll down here. So none of that. I don't do anything with any of that. So it's like beyond the solve and the death benefit option, that's pretty much all I do when I'm running an illustration. It's pretty simple. You don't have to, it's not simple if you don't know what to do. Like if you just look at it and think, well, what do I put in all these fields? You don't know that you don't need to put things in all the fields. But this solve does all the work for you if you don't care what the insurance amount is and you just want to find out what's the least amount of insurance and the highest amount we can get them in loans, which is most of the time what we're looking for. So Michelle, that's kind of how I do the illustrations. I don't know if there's something else you want me to go into, or if we have any questions.
Hey, Gina, thank you. Man, this was this training that you did today just covered a tremendous amount. It was fantastic. And I think that we can come back and possibly do a part 2 just to spend about 30 more minutes on showing you what numbers we show the client. And maybe that only takes 15 minutes because that is how you close the sale, right? And we want people to close the sale. And if you start showing them all of these numbers, you'll get into a situation where you can't answer questions. So yeah, absolutely.
I tell them, I show them like 2 pages, and then I send them the illustration. I'll tell them, I'm going to send you this, and I'll call it an illustration because they don't know what that means. I'm going to send you this document, and it's like 23 pages long. And we just looked at a couple pages because most people just care about the numbers. But if you have insomnia, then pull it out and read all 23 pages. And they laugh every single time. And I think out of all these I've done, I've had like 2 people that actually went through and read the whole entire thing and had a couple more questions. But they don't care about all that other stuff. They just care about the numbers.
Very good. Well, again, we appreciate your time. Before we leave, guys, before we close the call, I know that Mike is going to pull up a contest that we have running, two announcements that I want to share with you. So for those of you who want to jump on the boat and spend a day with us, anybody that issues over $10,000 in premium before June 28th or by June 28th is going on the boat here in Clear Lake with us, and that's on June 30th. So anybody can make this trip, guys. Anybody can do it. Anybody can win. And then we have also our Summer Slam convention over in Dallas. And that is, Mike, do you have a slide on that? It's July 7th and 8th, Wednesday and Thursday. We're going to be at Top Golf having fun and doing some education. And we'll send the link out so you can register. If you have not already registered, we put that in the Slack link for everybody. So, well, guys, this concludes our call for tonight. Mike, do you have anything else?
I don't.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. We appreciate your time. Thank you again, Gina. We appreciate your time. And I know this training is going to help. But we do have it recorded, so we'll be able to listen to it again and again and take notes. Y'all have a great evening. We'll see you next Monday.
Bye. Thanks.
You're welcome.